Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hot Rod Bob, and you've got Gas, the morning edition. And today we're going to talk about something that one of our own co-hosts brought up. She had a question about it. Anna Octane asked, "What are cheater slicks and why?" Well, you don't want the front tires to get mingled with the rear tires because then you could have a problem, and that's how you got a cheater slick. No, not really, but it sounded fun for the start. Hey, what the cheater slicks were was back in the early days of drag racing. If you remember, street tires were very narrow. Hi, Trevor Larkin, Jay Black, John Mullen. How you doing this morning? Well, street tires were very narrow. They didn't have wide tires like we're used to seeing today. As a matter of fact, the wide ovals and the wide tires didn't go on production cars until the mid to late 1960s. And even then, they didn't provide that much traction. They were just wider. So what happened back in the early days? Good morning, Johnny Martinez. How are you doing today? Long time no see. We got to get out to breakfast sometime when this all is lifted. Now, yes, and even the Stingray bicycle had cheater slicks back in the day. All right, so what is a cheater slick? All right, basically, back in the early days of drag racing, you needed traction. Those skinny street bias ply tires just didn't do it. It was tough to get the power to the pavement. And even regular slicks back in the day, you remember those guys just smoking them? Well, those slicks were not allowed on street class tires or street class cars. So what they did is they came up with a recap. They took a standard tire, recapped it, and usually it was a worn out tire, but don't forget, tires in those days didn't last that long. 10, 15, 20,000 miles was a good tire back in the days when there was only bias ply here in the U.S. Yes, Michelin did make radial tires back in the day, but the Americans were late to catch on to the radial tire fad. Johnny says he had cheater slicks on the back of his 57. Well, that's cool. I had them on my Ford Falcon. Now, back in the days when cheater slicks came about, they were recaps. They weren't real expensive. What they did is they recapped a standard tire casing with a wider flat tread or tread area. Now, it had enough tread to be DOT legal. The cop wouldn't give you a ticket. You had tread. It was a certain depth. It wasn't a flat, slick tire. But they were called cheater slicks because it was intended for racing. Hi, Rosanna. How you doing? Rosanna Hernandez watching us right now from Utah. How the kids doing? All right, so the cheater slick came about. There were a lot of companies that did them, including the company that we think of more about shifters, Hurst Industries. They came out with a slick, and it was a pie crust style. Now, pie crust was the side wall of the tire right at the top. It looked like, the pie crust, little holes or divots in the side. Hurst came out with them in the 1950s, and they made them through the 70s. Now, they were not the only ones. There was a company called Positraction Inglewood Tire that was doing the same thing. I had a set of Kasslers on the back of my Falcon because, well, they were the only ones doing them on 13-inch wheels, and I had a 6-cylinder Falcon. And I didn't have enough power really to spin them, although I could spin standard tires. I wanted the look, and my mother didn't know better, so at $19.95 a tire, I had a set of cheater slicks. It's basically racing rubber made into a recap and then given just enough tread to make it street legal. And you could run them at the track because, well, you had a street car and you needed to run street legal tires. So the cheater slick came about because it was basically a racing tire with a little bit of tread, and you could run it on a street legal car. Now, back then, retreads. Try and find a retread today. The only way to do it is buy yourself some cheater slicks because there's a lot of companies making them right now, including Hurst has gone back into production of theirs. Towel City Tire back in Kannapolis, North Carolina has got them, and they're doing the pie crust ones. They're cool. They'll even do them in a white wall, I believe. Then there is the guys at Coker Tire. They are reproducing a non-retread, but they are using the original design and possibly the molds from Firestone. Now, Firestone's tire was a little bit different on the sidewall. It didn't have a traditional pie crust side. It looked a little bit different. Now, what I liked about some of the tires and why I wanted a set of pause tractions, and I did have a set of those as well. I wore out the Castlers and got the pause tractions, was the tread pattern on the pause tractions was crossed checkered flags. And if you looked at my earlier post, you'll see a picture of that. John Gomes says the real cheaters were made in Pasadena. Caldwell. Yep, I had Caldwells. We actually used Caldwells for autocrossing as well. They started recapping radial tires and then putting a softer compound on street tires that we could use in autocrossing. Before there were performance street tires available, we were getting Caldwells and Castlers. Caldwells I had on my autocross car for a while. John Gomes, the choice of Van Nuys street racers. Yeah, because we can go right into Pasadena, California, get them. Robert Roth says something about Mickey Thompson tires. And they got basically a street legal cheater slick today as well. Sam Browns is watching, Jason Staffer, Phil Hoffman, Mr. NHRA, and Jerry Weddle. Thank you for tuning in this morning. So cheater slicks look cool. And I'll tell you what, I've been tossing around the idea of getting rid of one of my cars and building a T-bucket. And I got to thinking about that the other day when I wrote a story about T-buckets. And the two most famous T-buckets, Norm Grabowski's T and TV Tommy Ibo's T. They were cool. Tommy's had the slick style tires on the back, the cheater slicks. But his car was a lot quicker than Norm's. Tommy actually raced his for the sake of racing. And it was a quick car. Robert Roth says he had Caldwell tires on his Maverick. Yeah, I mean, if you needed a performance tire and you had a 13-inch wheel or an odd-size wheel, Caldwell was the guys to go to. Keith Carpenter is watching us. Jason Schaefer, Hoosiers. Yeah, Hoosiers, and their tires are still available. Hoosiers, M&H, they make a cheater slick, but it's a real racing tire with a soft sidewall to get some great traction. Now, in the early days of the cheater slick, it was basically a street casing. And this was before DOT numbers. You got to remember, guys, back in the 50s and 60s, there weren't DOT numbers on tires. You didn't have a Department of Transportation approval on your tires. Good morning, Denny Sanders and Danny Santos. Alan Gunnick, how are you this morning? So they recap a tire. Now, some guys said they could get them down bald again, down to the original casing before they came apart. I also had no problem with it ever throwing a casing, but then again, I wasn't really doing hard burnouts and able to spin them. I did have to lock the rear end on my car because they were such additional traction compared to what was available at the time. Hey, Sam Browns, how you doing? And Raphael, thank you for tuning in, Raphael. All the way from overseas, across the pond. Raphael, you're in Italy, if I remember correctly. So the cheater slicks, I had them on the back. I had the Caldwells, or did I have the Castler? The Caldwells at the time. No, maybe it was the Posit Tractions. Either way, they would eat up my spider gears on my Ford Falcon. And I worked at a gas station at the time. And after the third set of gears, my boss said, I ain't doing this for you anymore. So I took the centerpiece, which on the Ford Falcon, it was just a slide-in gear set, like a 10-bolt Chevy rear end. And I went to the junkyard. I picked it up for $10 because no one was building Falcons for performance, especially 6-cylinder Falcons, except little old me. Anyway, I took it into school, and I had metal shop and auto shop. When I went into the metal shop, I bought a whole box of welding rod. We were using arc welders. Caldwell spun on the rim. You lost some air on Alan's car. Yeah, and that was a problem, too, if you got too much traction. Hi, Don Gady. How are you doing this morning? What I ended up doing was taking a whole box of welding rod, arc welding it, and arc welding the spiders solid. So it ended up being a big ball. It worked. I never broke another set of spider gears. And with those positive traction tires on the back, I was able to go sideways anytime it rained. As a matter of fact, I could spin the tires a lot easier in the rain. As a matter of fact, that was the only time I could spin those tires. And that's why I kept breaking spider gears. More traction? It's got to, the stress has got to go someplace. And in the case of the little Ford Falcons back in 1960, the stress went right to the spider gears and it went snap. But it was kind of cool because, the guys knew what locked rear ends were. And I'd pull into school and I'd make that turn into the parking spot, and the inside tire would chirp a little bit. It's about the only time I could get it to chirp is when I'd make a turn on those types of things. Raphael, good morning. You are in Italy. Good. 8 p.m. there. Ooh, it's an evening. Well, I hope you had a good dinner and hope you're doing well. Marlon Mitchell's watching us right now out of Marlowe's Frame and Alignment, where he's done some brake conversions for me for disc brakes and always sets up the front ends on my cars. Danny Santos, yeah, how you doing this morning? So cheater slicks. Now, you can take a look at some of the photos that I've posted. You can go on and do a search. Now, the problem with doing an internet search for cheater slicks, there's a grunge band or a garage band called Cheater Slicks. So a lot of the information you get ends up being that. I haven't listened to their music yet. Not really interested in it. I'm all about cars and stuff like that. So Cheater Slicks, the question of the day brought to you by Anna Octane, our own sexy co-host, Anna Marco. So you can thank her for this question. You got a question? You want a topic covered? Send me a note. PM me on Facebook. Post it on my page. We can do it. Denny Sanders says his dad ran Castler Recap Cheater Slicks up until late 65 when the better tires and better fit and requirement for 7-inch tires was still part of the stock eliminated classes. Rex Road from Virginia is watching. Hey, Rex, got a question for you. Heard rumor that the National Hot Rod Reunion has been canceled or postponed. Any word on that? We got a lot of conflicting information. So let us know. Would you post it up? Post it on my page. Let me know what you find out. Rapid Robbie Roth says he got pulled over a few times driving home with the drag van with his Mickey Thompson ET street tires. The officer didn't think they were street legal. Yeah, you run into that a lot. And again, we have a situation where some of the police, well, not some of the police, most of the police are not car people, and they don't necessarily understand some of these things or know it. Marlon Mitchell says, yeah, Caldwell Slicks. Yeah, you're a Valley guy. You had him. Rex Road is going to check things out for us on that National Hot Rod Reunion that's in Bowling Green every year. Al Theodore, how are you doing this morning? Thanks for tuning in. All right, so that's our topic for today, cheater slicks and their origin and why they were used. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm Hot Rod Bob Beck. You've got Gas, the morning edition, and these are our sponsors. Please contact them. Use them if you can. Our sponsors. GAAS, the Great American Auto Scene. Since 1990, your source for information, all car related. I'm Hot Rod Bob Beck. Our sponsors? Well, Valley Head Service, Irwindale Drag Strip, Irwindale Speedway, Service Tech, Moon Eyes, Tucker Tire, and Beach Underwriting. You guys have a great day. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got Gas, the morning edition. So if you're watching this, you are a gasaholic. Take care now.